go down to Disney World in Florida, I would always get to go to the magic shop, and I couldn't wait because the magic shops at Disney World were like the coolest places in the universe to me. There were two of them for a while. There was one called the Main Street Magic Shop and one called Merlin's Magic Shop, and they were both so cool. And they sold things like rubber bats and spiders and toy skeletons and little plaster skulls painted with glow-in-the-dark paint and wonderful things, even little tombstones with funny epitaphs on them, and just tons of wonderful stuff. Now, of course, those days are long gone. The magic shops eventually had to be removed so that they could be replaced with souvenir shops that sell exactly the same stuff all the other souvenir shops in the park sell. So that's what it's like in later years. But anyway, when I was a kid, there were these wonderful magic shops, and in the mid to late 70s, Don Post Studios came out with a line of glow-in-the-dark masks they called Glowin' Ghoulies. And the Glowin' Ghoulies were kind of, well, you probably know the skull, for one thing. I should back up a little. You probably know the glow-in-the-dark skull, but there were others. And in the beginning, a lot of the glow-in-the-dark masks were made to kind of look like stuff that would be in the magic shops, because the magic shops sold masks. And well, I know I, for one, that was my big thing every year, was as a souvenir, as my souvenir of the trip we would take once or twice every summer, I would get a Don Post mask from one of those great magic shops. And they always had all kinds of Don Post masks in there in different price ranges. And if I didn't pick the most expensive one in the place, I might even score two of them. So it was always fun. But I would come away from that magic shop, one of the magic shops, with a Don Post mask every year, or sometimes two. And well, the Glowin' Ghoulies, a lot of them were made to look like things from the Disney Haunted Mansion. They weren't exact replicas of characters from the Haunted Mansion, but they were sort of in that style. They had that kind of whimsical, cartoony look to them. Now, some masks were made available glow-in-the-dark or non-glow over the years, but one of the ones that only, as far as I know, only was ever offered in glow-in-the-dark was the Gargoyle. That's right, the glow-in-the-dark Gargoyle, sculpted by none other than, you guessed it, Bill Malone. That's right. And the tag right here says, see if it says a year on here, or on the mask, if it says 1978, I think this one says, 6 or 8. But anyway, there he is, the Gargoyle. And I always liked this guy. The glow-in-the-dark masks of the period were black vinyl rather than latex. And we'll look inside, see that? He's black on the inside. These masks were black vinyl and then were stipple painted or sponge painted with glow-in-the-dark paint. And this was really high-tech, super cool, state-of-the-art back in those days, okay? And this particular guy right here, I always thought it would be fun to paint him in some other color, but he was only ever offered in the glow-in-the-dark version. Now, I mentioned a minute ago that some of the other masks were available either glow or non-glow. There was a Mr. Hyde mask, which was called Frozen Ghost in its glow-in-the-dark incarnation. There was a mask called Overreactor, and the same mask as glow-in-the-dark would have been called Nuclear Death. Who else? I think the glow-in-the-dark Eric was also called Eric. If you got a name like Eric, you're scary enough, apparently. But, Gillis was a mask that did not glow in the dark, but the glow-in-the-dark one was called Elton Alien. That kind of thing. This guy, though, the Gargoyle, whom I believe to have been inspired loosely by some of the architectural flourishes in the Haunted Mansion, like the stanchions and some of the stanchions, and I can't think of anything other than the stanchions at the moment, so we'll go with those. There were little gargoyle bat-like creatures here and there on the stylings and throughout the Haunted Mansion that looked a little bit like this. I think maybe they kind of had that style in mind with this character. But anyway, of course, it's always possible somebody who worked at Don Post Studios at the time had a copy of this mask and painted it some other way just because they felt like it, but I've never seen one. Every copy I've ever seen of the Gargoyle has looked just like this one. And by the way, the Dawn Post Glow Gargoyle is no relation to the Bernie Casey Gargoyle from the movie Gargoyles. Okay? No relation. But this thing glowed in the dark wonderfully, and I have a black light here right now in the attic that we're going to try and see if see how it looks on your motion picture viewing device in which you're looking to see. Yeah, okay, so hold on and we'll see if this works. So just be a quick cut here and we'll find out how this looks on video. And voila, it's just that easy. Take a look at that, kids. Can you get the full effect of that? I bet you can, and I'll bet it looks really awesome, doesn't it? Now a mask like this would have only set you back maybe 15 to 20 bucks back in the 70s, but today you'd be lucky to get one for maybe in the $100 to $150 range because they're very rare. But as you can see, the glow power is fantastic. The design is awesome, and this particular guy is even of a little bit of a special sentimental significance to me, because the second time I ever met Laura, you guys know Laura, right? My wife? Yeah, you know her. The second time we ever met was a night she came to work at my haunted house when we were very young. And Laura came to work at the haunted house, by which I mean be a monster and scare people one evening towards Halloween. And this ended up being the very first Dawn Post mask that Laura ever wore on her actual head, you see. Because I had one of these, and I had, none of my dopey guy friends were wearing it that night for some reason, but I had this awesome mask, and we had a room that was totally pitch black and was a maze that you had to feel your way through as you went through my haunted house. And well, what would be better in a pitch black room than a glow-in-the-dark monster? So Laura was stuck in the maze with the glow-in-the-dark Dawn Post Gargoyle mask and a cheesy, crappy-looking dyed bed sheet. Okay, that was the only costume that went with this thing, was a dyed bed sheet. I was a kid. I didn't have, you know, fabulous, cool costumes back then. So she was in the maze with this. And by the way, if you've ever tried black fabric dye, like from Rit Dye or one of those other companies that makes related products, have you ever tried dyeing something black? If you have, you know they lie like dogs, because you can't dye anything black. If you put tons and tons and tons of their black dye into it, you get kind of a homely purplish gray kind of color. And that was what Laura was stuck with many years ago in the maze with this cool glow-in-the-dark Bill Malone sculpted Dawn Post Gargoyle that has nothing to do with the movie Gargoyles, but gosh, it's cool. And that's all I could think of to say about it. Aren't you glad? Thanks for tuning in. See you up here again in the attic next week for another mask.